This is a moment where everyday city streets are quietly turning into a living classroom of civic engagement, and most people aren't even aware it's happening. What you're about to see isn't just a protest or a news story, it's a complex interaction between residents, local institutions, and federal authorities that is revealing patterns in how communities respond, adapt, and hold attention without confrontation. But here's the detail that often goes unreported. The way citizens are interacting isn't chaotic, it's intentional, strategic, and surprisingly organized. And while many headlines focus on conflict, the real story lies in how ordinary people are influencing operations and shaping civic awareness in real time. By the time this video ends, you'll understand why what's happening in these streets could set examples for cities across the country, and why it might change the way we think about everyday civic responsibility.
In Minneapolis and St. Paul, Minnesota, an unprecedented wave of civic engagement and federal activity is quietly reshaping the relationship between communities and government. You may have seen headlines mentioning protests, federal officers, and local legal disputes, but what you haven't seen is the full story: how thousands of ordinary citizens, students, and local organizations are creatively responding, documenting, and interacting with these federal operations in ways that reveal much about American democracy in practice. Imagine this: streets filled not with chaos or violence, but with whistles, banners, and communities observing, communicating, and signaling their presence in peaceful ways. While federal agencies carry out their enforcement objectives, citizens are finding innovative, non-confrontational methods to maintain transparency. And this isn't limited to one neighborhood or one day. It's part of an ongoing pattern that has ripple effects across the state, and potentially across the nation. Now, here's the twist that few mainstream reports cover. These interactions aren't just spontaneous reactions. They're part of a coordinated, strategic civic response, blending legal awareness, local activism, and a sense of shared responsibility. The implications extend beyond Minnesota, raising questions about the balance of federal power, local rights, and the role of everyday citizens in observing government actions. Federal officers have been deployed in unprecedented numbers, creating what some experts call a high-visibility operational environment, but without the sensationalism of violence or confrontation. Instead, the focus is on observation, transparency, and civic awareness. Residents are actively engaging in methods that communicate vigilance and accountability, yet remain fully peaceful. From community-organized whistle campaigns to school walkouts, every action is carefully measured to make a point without breaking the law or causing harm. But why does this matter? Because this story exposes how ordinary citizens can interact with federal authority in ways that are effective, visible, and responsible. It's a real-world example of democracy in action, at a time when the balance between federal authority, local governance, and community rights is being tested like never before. Throughout this video, we'll unpack multiple layers of the situation: the legal context, community strategies, local leadership responses, federal perspectives, and the broader social and political implications. By the end, you'll see why Minnesota isn't just a local story, it's a case study in civic engagement, governance, and the power of nonviolent community action. In Minnesota, the situation is evolving through a series of events that illustrate how local communities respond to federal presence. Federal officers have been deployed across Minneapolis and St. Paul, reportedly to carry out enforcement operations, yet their presence is prompting discussions that go far beyond enforcement itself. Communities are participating in civic engagement in ways that are unusually organized, from neighborhood awareness initiatives to coordinated school activities and public observation campaigns. In Brooklyn Park, students reportedly walked out of schools as a response to local enforcement activities. These walkouts, according to publicly available information, were peaceful and deliberate, designed to signal engagement rather than confrontation. The participation of young people highlights a broader pattern. Ordinary citizens can influence public awareness and civic discourse through observation, documentation, and coordinated nonviolent actions. The legal and administrative dimension adds another layer to the story. Several prosecutors, including the first Assistant U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson, reportedly resigned amid the controversy surrounding local investigations and federal oversight. Public statements from the Justice Department indicate that there is currently no basis for a civil rights criminal investigation, while an FBI inquiry into related incidents continues. These developments reflect the tension that can arise between federal authority and local judicial structures, showing how procedural decisions can have tangible effects on community perception and public discourse. Local communities have adopted strategic methods to communicate their presence and vigilance. According to reports, residents are using nonviolent signaling, such as coordinated whistles, organized gatherings, and documentation of publicly observable activity. The objective is to ensure transparency and accountability without creating conflict. This has developed into a multi-layered civic landscape, where every participant contributes to an ongoing narrative of oversight, responsibility, and civic involvement. The broader implications extend into policy and governance. Minnesota state authorities, along with the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, have filed lawsuits aiming to limit or regulate the scope of federal operations, citing constitutional protections and the First Amendment. These legal actions demonstrate how local governments are negotiating the boundaries of federal authority while advocating for community rights and public oversight. Meanwhile, discussions in neighboring states, such as Wisconsin, include proposals to restrict civil enforcement near sensitive public spaces like schools, hospitals, and government buildings, signaling a growing interest in defining the balance between authority and civic safety nationwide. Community reactions are also shaping public dialogue. Local leaders, including city officials and educators, emphasize the importance of measured, peaceful engagement. Residents organize watch groups, share information, and coordinate neighborhood communication networks, all intended to keep the public informed and maintain nonviolent observation. This approach highlights the creativity and adaptability of communities when faced with complex governance situations, showing that civic responsibility does not require confrontation to be effective. Even within this environment, federal agencies continue to operate according to their mandates. Publicly available statements suggest that officers are focused on enforcement objectives while attempting to minimize public disruption. Citizens, aware of these objectives, have responded with measured actions that respect the law while maintaining visibility. This interplay between federal activity and community response illustrates a broader lesson in civic engagement, that influence and oversight can take the form of organization, observation, and consistent, lawful presence. As the story unfolds, each layer adds to a deeper understanding of civic dynamics. From student walkouts and peaceful community campaigns to legal challenges and federal procedures, the situation in Minnesota is creating an ongoing example of how ordinary citizens and institutions interact in complex governance contexts. By examining these multiple perspectives, it becomes clear that the balance between authority, public rights, and civic participation is continuously negotiated, with real implications for how communities nationwide might respond to similar situations in the future. This evolving scenario underscores a critical point. Effective civic engagement does not rely on sensationalism or confrontation. Instead, it relies on awareness, organization, and sustained participation. Residents of Minnesota are demonstrating that nonviolent methods can generate visibility, accountability, and dialogue in ways that are both meaningful and responsible. The patterns emerging from these actions are likely to inform not only local decision-making but also broader discussions about governance, community responsibility, and the role of citizens in shaping public awareness. As we step back from the immediate events unfolding in Minnesota, it becomes clear that what we've observed is more than a series of isolated actions. The engagement of communities, students, and local organizations illustrates a broader principle. Civic responsibility can take many forms, and even subtle, non-confrontational actions can shape public awareness and influence governance. These events reveal how ordinary citizens, when organized and informed, contribute to transparency, accountability, and dialogue within their own communities. The patterns emerging here suggest lessons that extend far beyond Minneapolis and St. Paul. Communities everywhere can learn from the ways people are combining peaceful observation, coordinated communication, and legal awareness to engage with complex civic situations. What may appear at first glance as minor gestures, school walkouts, whistles, neighborhood observation, are part of a larger framework demonstrating how collective action, rooted in lawful and ethical methods, can resonate across an entire city, state, or even nation. Looking forward, there are still many questions that remain open. How will federal and local authorities continue to navigate this balance? What new strategies might communities adopt to maintain transparency and accountability in the future? And how can these examples inform civic engagement in other cities facing similar challenges? These are questions that invite reflection, discussion, and further exploration, setting the stage for a deeper understanding of the dynamics between authority, policy, and citizen participation. By examining Minnesota's experience in this way, we can see a model of civic interaction that is deliberate, measured, and constructive. The story does not end here. Each action, each decision, and each community response adds to an ongoing dialogue about how societies function when citizens actively engage with the systems around them. And as these events continue to develop, there is an opportunity for viewers to consider how similar approaches might be applied in their own communities, fostering awareness, responsibility, and participation without conflict. In the next video, we will explore how these principles are being reflected in other regions across the United States, and what lessons can be drawn from the interplay of local initiatives and federal policies. By understanding the strategies and outcomes in Minnesota, viewers gain insight into the ways civic engagement can be both effective and respectful, and why informed, nonviolent participation remains a cornerstone of democratic life.